There we go. Ah. All right, so for today's agenda, we're going to start out with talking about some of the events that are going on in the community. So if you know of any analytic events that are coming up in the next month or so, would love to get a shout out on things that we should know about, because I frankly don't know many of them. So would love your help with that. We always have a session in here called Get to Know a Member, where it's just a good opportunity if you are new to our user group or having specific problems within Tableau or are looking for a job or an opportunity. It's a way to get a shameless plug-in and for the broader community to get to know you. And then we're going to be going into our two presentations today. We might get a little bit creative in how the order in which we go about this, but we've got Vince Baumel from JLL, fresh into JLL. And he's going to be presenting on Tableau development tips and tricks, which I'm very excited for, because Vince is really good about dropping the interesting tips and tricks on Twitter. And if you follow him, you'll definitely learn something new, what feels like weekly from him. And then I will be also presenting on my need for speed, Tableau performance best practices and how to do performance recording within Tableau. And then, of course, we'll finish off with best thing you've learned within Tableau, any kind of group therapy, where if you do have specific Tableau questions, we're going to attempt to solve it live on the call. And then from there, we'll split into happy hour, where all of you at home can crack open a beer and enjoy the evening, and we will do so the same here. So first off, mark your calendars. Who has any events that they would like to shout out? And for people in the room, you might have to yell extra loud at my microphone so that we can hear you.
I have one this Friday. Ever caught it? There's a Biz Connect community that's actually mostly hosted out of India from a former Agenda Mills, now at Tableau, called Biz Connect. You do a web search for it. They do community kind of stuff, showcasing things.
Nice.
I caught one similar to your performance reporting best practices from somebody.
Cool.
JP Morgan. But I think we do a Biz Connect, Tableau. I think in YouTube, they have recordings out there. We'll probably find links out to their community too.
Awesome.
So they have one at 8 a.m. Friday morning.
Awesome. 8 a.m. Friday morning, Viz Connect. Search for it on the Google. Is it Tableau specific or just all sorts of Viz? Okay.
Yep.
Very cool. Thanks, Rick. Any others? I feel like it's pretty quiet. It's almost like it's summer in Minnesota. Yeah.
I do. It's not a calendar thing, but within the next week or so, there will be a job posting for senior Tableau developer at Boston Scientific. Shitty manager, great job.
Senior Tableau developer. Nice. And that position is going to be posted next week?
Ideally next week.
Okay. Whenever that manager gets their.
Whenever that manager gets their stuff together.
Okay. Very cool. Awesome.
So look for that.
All right. So you heard it here first. New job opportunity with an awesome manager. Yeah. Speak up. Let's go. Awesome. Okay. Senior systems analyst for Relievant Med Systems.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Medical device.
Yeah. Awesome. And Salesforce and Tableau experience. So that'd be cool. And where can they find that job posting? LinkedIn?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. All right. Awesome. All right. Jobs are out there. That's great. All right. Next up, we're going to go into Get to Know a Member. It's a monthly ritual of ours to give a chance for anyone who's new to the Tableau user group or has maybe been attending and lurking in the background to finally stand up and tell us a little bit more about yourself. It's a pretty relatively painless interview. You're good. Do I have any volunteers? I'll take one from the room, and then I'm going to go virtual for the next one. All right, can I ask you to come up here a little bit? Sure. You can talk to the room. I'll just point the mic at you.
Okay, sweet. Okay, my name's Tony Sullivan. I run my own operation. My company's called Metro Grid. It is a huge company of one. My role obviously is I'm owner and CEO, but my primary job is I do transportation logistics. So basically, school needs a kid transported. They come to me. I take care of everything up to the kid gets in the van. So that's my primary role. As far as what I'm doing with Tableau, I'm still relatively new to it. Only been using it a couple months at this point, but I've used it basically to show to my stakeholders, my clients, where they think they want to look at the feasibility of doing something, and then it's up to me to put the data together to say, yeah, this is a good idea, or maybe not so much. What am I good at Tableau? I've only been using it for a couple of months, so right now I'd say nothing. And what Tableau features or functions do you struggle with? Again, I've only been using it for a couple of months, so I'd say everything.
Nice. Well, very cool.
All
Nice,
right.
nice to meet you.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to take it to the phones. Somebody used the raise the hand functionality. Rich, let's go.
Hi, my name is Rich Iwan. I have been using Tableau for about 3 weeks. I just started at Wells Fargo. I was at Thomson Reuters for a long time and used Alteryx a lot there, but now I'm going to be using Tableau a lot. Definitely learning a lot of things. I would say the biggest thing that I've been working through and trying to figure out is filters, and specifically how to have a filter on a worksheet and pass that as a parameter to be a filter on a dashboard. And then also, if you have two different inputs with mostly the same values, but some that are slightly different, trying to combine all those values and appear on one filter on a dashboard. But I'm very looking forward to meeting everyone and seeing and learning a lot from this group, both from Tableau and just from like building a network. So thank you.
Awesome. And maybe I missed it, but are you in the Twin Cities area? Somewhere else?
Yes, I'm in Minneapolis.
Awesome. Nice to meet you.
Thanks.
And then just before we get into presentations for just a tech check, Rich, are you able to hear us all right? Is all our audio coming through good?
Yeah, audio and video is coming through very well.
Perfect. Great. Only if you come up here, Serena. I can't get him on there.
Everyone's like, hey, I'm having a great time.
All right. We're taking a photo op in the room, so smile if you're virtual.
I could have a picture of the virtual one in just a second. So.
Just first.
All right, everybody. All right, everybody say data fam.
Nice.
You just take a picture of your screen.
Let me get the attendees wherever that is.
It is,
There we go.
press the grid. There you go. And anyone that's comfortable enough turning their camera on, would you do that for 1 second? Maybe more than 1 second.
Ooh, look at all that. Wow. So many friendly faces. Wow. Great participation too. I love it.
Yeah, I know. We gotta get the whole screen.
Ooh,
filled.
can we hit
need-
100%?
I need 6 more people to turn their cameras on before I can take this picture. I don't care if you're playing PlayStation. Oh, Vince.
Oh, Vince got in there.
All right.
3 more. Can we get 3 more? Sam, I know your camera works.
Nice.
There we go.
Oh, yes. Perfect.
Nice. Thank you.
Guys.
You can go back to your off-camera ways. All right. You still all right with me going first? Then we'll just do the swap.
Sure.
Does that work? Okay. All right. Let's get to it.
That's coming out.
Oh, I got to get out of presentation on the PowerPoint. Technology. All right. I'm gonna see if I can figure out a setup so I can actually face the crowd too. Don't need this. Oh, the HDMI cord is short. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Luke. If you haven't met me, I do help co-run the Tableau user group alongside a bunch of other friendly faces in the room and externally. I've been a Tableau fan and user since 2012-ish, and it's really been a really fun journey for me. Tableau has been revolutionary for my career, as I'm sure many of others in the room can say the same. And I've always been in data and love it. So I started out a career as a SAP BW developer with Rick in the room. We were in the same space together, so
Followed me around for a while.
I followed you around for a while, but had a lot of fun learning about SAP BW and how that all works. I would not suggest it as a career path because it wasn't like a long-term plan, but really enjoyed my transition into Tableau. And then a fun fact for myself is I'm actually a one-wheel enthusiast. It's pretty self-explanatory, but it's those little motorized electric skateboard things that has one wheel. It's really my way as a father of two in suburban America to feel like I can still be dangerous and risky. So it's a lot of fun.
You don't carry your kids in it.
Not yet. What? A helmet, of course. Yes, please always wear your helmet. But yeah, I've got a few just bruises on my elbow that tells some good stories. All right. So as far as agenda today, I wanted to just introduce the concept of performance recording within Tableau, because not a lot of people know that there is the ability to measure performance. Then more importantly is to figure out how to speed up your dashboard to make it better. Performance recording spits out of a bunch of interesting results that I can help you interpret and how I go about interpreting those results. And then of course, what everyone wants out of a presentation is practical takeaways on how to speed up your dashboard if it is running slow. So let's dig in. I'm gonna get these faces out of the way. All right. So why do we spend so much time talking about performance? Is because performance matters. We live in a society of very fast consumption. Google has the ability to search billions of websites and return our Google search results in a matter of less than a second. But it's amazing that when we go to work and we're like analyzing 100,000 rows of sales data, it takes 10, 20 seconds to load that thing up. And the reason why I spend so much of my day trying to optimize performance is because if you have a dashboard or any kind of analysis where you're trying to get business users to actually use it, if they're waiting 5-10 seconds, they're probably not interested in waiting. We are just a very impatient culture. And so it's important that we squeeze every bit of performance out of our dashboards. So what is performance recording? So we'll go through a demo of how to set up performance recording, but at a high level, performance recording exists on both Tableau and desktop and Tableau server. It allows you as a user to be able to measure and analyze how long your key events, all the things that Tableau does for us behind the scenes in terms of querying data, sorting the data, and visualizing the data. It does all of that work, and Tableau performance recording allows us to actually visually see how long those events are taking place. So within Tableau, every time a user clicks on a button, changes a filter, or interacts with anything, or even opens up a workbook, there is some kind of performance element to that Tableau is able to capture. And performance recording allows you to capture those events. It is also important to remember that performance recording is actually measuring the execution time and the durations. So both of those are really useful when trying to understand how you can optimize performance on your workbook. Why it's important is a lot of times people will use performance recording to help pinpoint exactly where their dashboard is running slow. There are a lot of people that I run into that are just trying to optimize performance by just like switching a bunch of calcs and moving things around. And I would call that blind luck if you make that happen. Performance recording will actually allow you to identify which visualization, which query, which field might actually be causing your whole entire dashboard to be running slow. And once you understand how to interpret this, it gets a lot easier to speed up your performance because you don't have to solve for everything. You really have to solve for one or two things, and then the whole thing gets better. So how to start performance recording is within Tableau Desktop. I will show this, but sometimes on Zoom, these like sub menus don't show up on a screen share. So you've got settings and performance, and then you can start performance recording. And then a fun fact for people that not many people know is on Tableau server, you actually do have the ability to do performance recording as well. You will have to ask your friendly site admin or server admin to click a checkbox in the settings to allow it to happen. I don't think there's any good reason why that shouldn't be checked, in my opinion. And then you are able to append on record performance equals yes to any workbook URL, and you get the same exact experience that I'm about to walk you guys through in desktop. And things that I think about when trying to quantify the performance on performance recording is one, you have to open up your Tableau desktop. You can choose to just open up Tableau desktop and actually analyze the performance of loading up your dashboard. Most people actually just load up their dashboard and then go into help, settings, and performance and start performance recording. From there, it doesn't really look like anything happened. The submenu goes away and Tableau just continues to exist. But what's actually happening is that Tableau is listening behind the scenes for any activity that you take after that point. And so step number 3 is really important. You got to do something. You got to click on something. You got to filter something. You got to start making Tableau start to query data and try to draw new data. One tip that I'll really hone in on in a bit here is making sure that my personal preference is just to do one action, because I think it helps quantify the performance. There is a school of thought out there that you can click around a lot and it gives you a lot of different like query times. And so you can maybe figure out like the average event that took the longest. But my thought process is if you can just solve for the one event that you know is slow, you can help bring that down. It'll be easier to analyze and it'll be easier to actually optimize the performance of that. Once you do that one action, in my opinion, you can go back now and go help, settings of performance, and end performance recording. And then there will be a new workbook that'll eventually load up, a whole new Tableau workbook instance that'll pop up on your desktop. So as far as recording tips, like I mentioned already, I would highly recommend sticking to one simple action. So changing a filter, clicking on a bar chart, and then stopping the performance recording. I find it much easier to interpret the results. Once we get into actually interpreting the results, I would encourage you to focus on the duration of the event and not necessarily the timestamp. Because within these Tableau workbooks, there is this like random timestamp, but really all that's capturing is like what time of day or like what is kind of a really random number that is not really important to your analysis. It's just how long the event actually took is the most important. There is a concept within Tableau called query caching, and that really just means that the data that you're pulling back is actually sitting in local memory. Put simply is that when you run the same action multiple times, the second time you run it in Tableau, it's magically going to be faster. And you might think you actually solved something, but really all that happened is that Tableau is storing that locally. And as soon as somebody else comes in and changes the query a little bit, it's going to continue to run slow. And so my one thing to encourage you for this is make sure you're choosing different filter values instead of relying on the same combination, because otherwise you're going to keep hitting caching and you're going to think you're magically making your dashboard faster and you're just hitting the cache. If you're working on Tableau desktop and your Tableau workbook is running slow, a rule of thumb I have is that it's going to be equally slow on Tableau server. Some environments I go into that people say that, oh, we're just going to put it on Tableau server because it has 64 gigs of RAM and the power of the internet behind it. And really, if the dashboard's slow on desktop, it's not going to magically be faster once you publish up to server. So I often am just doing performance recordings on the local desktop environment. It's much easier to control. I think Tableau server is going to add actually more complexities when it comes to things like network traffic and firewalls, which goes into my second report. My second to last point is that when you do server recording, you have to remember that there's also a lot of firewalls and network impact that's going to actually additionally slow down your dashboard. And a bonus last tip that I would maybe put more on the intermediate concepts, but important to understand is that Tableau also does this idea of query fusioning, which is a fancy way to say that if it finds out that there's two different worksheets that are asking for essentially the same information, it's actually only going to send one query to the database and try to optimize for sending less SQL. The reason why it's important to know that is just so that you understand that there won't be one query for every worksheet, because Tableau realizes that's super inefficient. But when you're looking through this performance recorder, you might be expecting a one-for-one match. Every worksheet needs a query, and that might not always be the case. So it's good to know query fusioning exists. So that way, if you realize there's less SQL statements than there are your worksheets, you understand why. All right, I'm gonna switch over to this. So see if I can. Where does one hide this thing? There, hide. Okay. So within Tableau desktop, as I've mentioned, you've got the ability to go up to. Oh man, it's way over here. help, settings and performance, and start performance recording. Once you click on that, that's how you start recording performance. And then the one thing I'd recommend is just go in here, change that one filter that all of your end users are doing. Ideally pick the one that you know has like the most data behind it. And then you just kind of let it sit and think. And then you can go back into that settings, help settings, and turn off performance recording. And then like a good cooking show, I actually have already done that the performance recording. Here you go. Like this is the very generic performance recording that Tableau has had since probably 2012 and hasn't changed a darn thing about it. But this is where we'll get into how to interpret some of these results. So getting oriented on it, there's really only 3 visuals that you need to be concerned about. The top one is just telling you what event has actually happened and when it happened. This is important to remember because at x-axis is going to have this concept of time. And remember, you don't really care about the time. You care about the length of that bar. It doesn't, like 8:48 means nothing to me, but the measure of that, the length of that bar is really important. The second one is going to actually tell you how long did this event actually take. And it's going to be sorted from highest to lowest. So oftentimes you will find that there is 1 to 5 things that are taking way longer than the rest of it. And you can remember that everything that within Tableau is going to happen in a very sequential manner. And so if there's anything that's taking a really long time, if you work on shortening that, you make the whole thing faster. So it's really important to focus in on like the top few things that are running a long time and focus on that. And then the last one is just a viz that'll be what auto-generated query was created. And I've got a few screenshots that'll show a little bit more about that.
Why are there 6 bars for one action?
There is actually, the way to read that is there are 6 different queries that are being run, all for different worksheets and visualizations. So Tableau is actually kicking off a number of worksheets or kicking off a number of queries to try to get all the information that's on this dashboard.
So likely he has a global filter that applies across all sheets.
Okay. Can you tell which one is which?
Yeah, just you wait.
Okay.
Interpreting performance results. So at the top, we've got the timeline. I already mentioned this overall, what I think is like a project Gantt view of all the dashboard loading steps. And I've got a really cool viz that I'll show you guys that I think even takes it a step further. This allows you to help understand all the task dependencies that Tableau has to run through, right? There's like a certain order that it knows it has to systematically go through and like get the data, calculate the data, visualize the data. And then I will say it again, ignore the x-axis, focus on the bar length. All that x-axis stuff is kind of pointless in my opinion. For the second one, this is where you should be really trying to pinpoint on the top like 1 to 5 events that are going to be your optimization candidates. Oftentimes when you're doing this performance recording, I would really expect that executing query is probably going to be the top 1 through 10. If I see anything that is not executing query, even make the top 5, that's like super alarming to me. And I would actually look probably mostly into that to understand like what kind of crazy LOD or crazy visualization or some kind of like Tableau hack are you doing that's causing a lot of like time to be spent. Executing query, getting the data should probably be the longest thing. That's the most complicated thing for Tableau to try to figure out. And then again, just be mindful of this whole concept of query fusioning and combined filters. Some of these queries will not 1-for-1 match the worksheet that they're associated with. It might be cleverly trying to grab another piece of data that some other worksheet could take advantage of. So just be mindful that it's not always 1-for-1 with what you're trying to visualize. And then the last one is when you click on a individual bar, the bottom visualization will fill up with what looks like a lot of gibberish. All I can say for this is that this is going to give you all of the ugly auto-generated SQL that Tableau has to make. The reason why Tableau is awesome is that it can like automatically write SQL behind the scenes. The reason why Tableau is not so awesome is that the auto-generated SQL is like not the prettiest stuff you've ever seen. But you can see why they have to build it the way that they do. If you are into really understanding what that SQL query is doing behind the scenes, or if you have a friendly database administrator who can help you walk through there, this is where it's helpful to work with them, scroll to the bottom of these things, look at the select clauses, look at the where clauses. That's going to tell you what fields are you grabbing, and from what tables you're grabbing from. And if you have a good database administrator who you're working through that with, they will probably tell you, like, why are you going to this table? Why are you grabbing this field? Which might actually help you optimize your dashboard. And if you don't have a database friend, then find somebody who knows SQL or learn SQL yourself, because what a great skill to have in this century. All right. So for the crown jewel, I'm just going to show you guys Luke's secret sauce, the custom Gantt that I personally love to build off of Tableau's rather archaic performance recording. To get there, I go into this visualization, the top one. I will make a duplicate because I don't want to ruin the original. I will shorthand basically getting rid of the first 4 dimensions in this table, and I'm going to keep something called start index. I take all 4 of those off, and I've got this lovely little Gantt chart. You can scroll through it, or if you want to see it all in one big view, you can do this. And this is kind of a fun way to look at what is the overall querying path, calculation path for Tableau dashboards. And this is where it's also kind of easy to visualize that how much of an impact that things like executing query have on the total dashboard. All of those green bars up front are the reason why all those like visualizations can't be calculated or visualized later in it. So if you see stuff like this, you don't have to worry about optimizing right away your calculations and visualizations. You need to be more asking, what are ways that I could actually reduce the data that I'm asking for or make it less complex when it's grabbing SQL queries. To take it a step further, I also add in something called worksheet to label. And so this now gives me even more information about what actual worksheet or visualization potentially is causing my problems. I know because I purposely made my scatter plot super busy and drawing a lot of points and asking for a lot of data, that surprise, surprise, like my longest query running is that getting all the data to pull off the scatter plot. And if I work on optimizing that scatter plot, asking questions on, is this important? Is there a different way to visualize this? What data do I actually need? All of those fun questions, you can actually work on reducing that longest running path. And like a good project manager, like this is all about the critical path. So if you can shorten the longest running thing, you can bring the whole schedule down. There you go. It's good sauce. Some of the best. So lastly, practical takeaways. I tend to think about the stages of Tableau performance recording in terms of retrieving data, calculating data, and drawing data. Those are really the 3 distinct paths that you will see every time you load a visualization. I have a super scientific way of measuring the performance impact. In my experience, about 60% of the time, all of those things around retrieving data are probably going to be your problem. So what I mean to say by that is that if you think about optimizing your calculations or think about optimizing your visualizations, I think it's actually more important to think about what data are you trying to draw in and try to minimize how much data you're trying to draw in. And then if you think you've minimized the data, then the next one I'd be worried about is calculations and trying to optimize that. Understanding what things you're sorting by, table calculations you're using, fixed LODs that you've gone crazy with. There's a lot of things that you can do to fix that piece as well. And to add context to Luke's secret sauce, that is like how the querying data and calculating data and drawing data takes place. All of those colors really help coordinate with what exactly Tableau is doing behind the scenes. All right. So key takeaways. Loading times, super important for Tableau adoption. They can really make or break whether people want to use your dashboards or not. A lot of my time, I go into organizations where like this thing takes 10 seconds. I want it to get it to 4 seconds. I've even done projects where this is 4 seconds. I want 2 seconds. Performance does matter because without it, people are just going to get really bored and not want to wait for analytics. And you don't want to create friction if there doesn't need to be. Using performance recording can help you figure out tactical ways you can make it easier. Otherwise, if you're just clicking around, you're just hoping for blind luck that you get something that's going to magically make your dashboard faster. When you're doing performance recording, I would highly suggest doing a single action. It really does allow you to hone in on what is actually the longest running task. Dashboard loading can only really go as fast as the slowest running event. So don't worry about optimizing everything. Just optimize the 2 or 3 things that are going to give you the biggest juice for the squeeze. Yeah, that's a good analogy. And then, as always, you can't performance tune around bad requirements. And so if your business users are asking the world of you, asking for all of the data under the sun presented in a table, essentially like Excel within Tableau, I would start with maybe asking why they are using something like Tableau, or if there is a better way to potentially visualize that, less data to pull in, a way to bring them through the journey, a lot of these performance opportunities can really come from asking better questions up front and having better conversations with your end users. And with that, I'll take questions.
So I thought that this was gonna be about, like an optimum number of rows and columns in your data set. Does that have anything to do with performance? And if so, what would you recommend for like, where does Tableau kind of connect?
Yeah. So the question was around like, is there kind of like a max like rows or columns that we need to be considering that might impact performance? And my answer to that is not really. There are certain things that for sure, like you want to optimize to, if you're making an extract, to pull in only the columns that you're actually using. You always want to reduce to like the minimal amount you actually need to pull it off. But also the beauty of how Tableau queries data is a very columnar structure. And so it's only going to be generating queries and asking for data from the columns that you're trying to pull into the data set. So columns for me don't have as big of an impact. Of course, you can squeeze a few extra seconds with just how extracts are optimized by bringing in less columns. But I think what's more important than anything is asking about the number of rows. For me, it's like if I see something that's running slow and I see executing query is running a long time, some of the basic questions I'll ask is, what does the granularity of the data, like what does a single row of information represent? And some of the common things I see is that people are just running like monthly sales numbers, yet they're bringing in like daily statistics on everything. And so if they're really looking to like optimize the performance on that, I would say, take it back to the database level, roll up your daily information to monthly, and now you've magically got 1/30th amount of the data that you used to have. And so the less data that you have to query against, of course, the faster these queries are going to run. So I really like, I do want, if I do sit down with somebody and I ask them about the granularity of the data and they're not able to explain to me, that's a huge red flag that like, we probably need to understand like, how much data are you asking for? And do you really understand if you need that much information, that much detail? And sometimes that is the case, in which case, like we get in this whole discussion of like how much fits into an extract and when to use live, but that could be like a whole nother presentation. Yeah.
Does it impact actual performance? So does the performance reporting have a major effect?
On the final performance? Okay, so the question is like, does running a performance recording affect performance? I don't believe so. And you're actually like turning it on and off, so you're not actually keeping performance recording on at all times. So your end users aren't.
Also, you kind of have a little test process.
Yeah, yeah, it's just like an in and out thing.
On the server, it might. I think it does use resources, server recording.
Even when you're not performance recording.
Oh, sorry, if it's, you're using it.
Yeah.
What I think my admin would tell me is, don't give the URL to your user, have performance recording as yes.
Yes, got it.
Things that they both are. So you gotta be a little careful that they're not always performance recording in all their URLs, so it's not turned on for all their records, all their requests. So I would say you would get in trouble if you had it on all the time.
Yeah. So for those on the call, like Rick is suggesting that just if you're going to share links to it, don't share the link that says record performance equals yes, because that means your end users will unknowingly be running a performance recording that could impact performance. But by default, it's like off, like it's not.
Kind of leads to this show user acceptance. So you talk about a lot of times business users don't really know what. You can give them a fantastic report instead of maybe weeks or months to build it, and you might as well print it because they use 1 or 2 of those investigations and you don't get into the code and
Yep.
It's awesome. And so if you have something where you track the user acceptance, seeing where they're going, you can see what they're using. You go, you know what, 3 courses, they're not using, so I should just back it down, which will make it run fast.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. The question or comment around it, I guess, is if you're making a Tableau dashboard or have Tableau dashboards out on server, looking at the not necessarily performance recording, but you can definitely look at some of the logs and SQL that's being generated out of those reports to see what parameters or what filters are being asked for all the time. A common thing that I see is that like people will set up these really like highly flexible like parameter slicers where it's like, I want you to be able to slice for like 20 different things. And that does have huge performance impacts. And when we go back and ask the end users, they're like, yeah, we only really use these 3 ever. And so if you like get rid of all those other options, it does make it faster. So like those parameter slicers can be sneaky.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, a lot of times you ask, say, well, do you really need that? They'll say, oh, yes, we do. But nobody uses it. No,
Yeah.
once you look
Yeah.
at it, you have to, don't use it.
Yeah.
I can jump in, we can have after this session on an option to do that, you can use something called replayer to capture Tableau logs,
Yes.
events. And you can actually break that down, but you have to go through and transform the log data into something reportable, which I've done, and it's not a lot of fun, but there's nothing out of the box that will do that, so
Yeah.
there's a lot of upfront work to do, but you can start getting into those specific behaviors. Yeah, you can actually get through and get down to the parameter level and actually see what values you want things out of
Mhm.
filters and parameters, things like that. But it is a lot of effort. You gotta go through the logs and play them out and empty them into a JSON, and then you have to transform that JSON into something that's
Free player.
called replayer.
Real quick.
Yeah, something open source from Tableau.
Yeah.
Not more after all.
So if you did catch all that, Rick knows a replayer open source from Tableau. If you have more questions, track down Rick Hoffman from General Mills.
And then after all that, your users are gonna say, well, we put it into Excel and use the filter there.
So there's always some.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we can definitely take more questions, but Vince, you want to get up here and maybe start doing some tech changeover?
Sure.
All right, you can, I think,
Yeah, I get a screen share here.
ooh, maybe. Please hold.
Okay.
So let me get some screen share going.
Participants now see your screen.
Yep, I can see it.
Okay.
These guys can't.
All right. Hi, everybody. I wanted to start with an apology because I intended to get here a lot earlier today and have all this set up ahead of time. But I have 2-year-old twin boys and a 5-year-old boy, and they.
Could I get you to turn on your mic?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
And they're a built-in excuse for a lot of things, and I narrowly avoided having to go to the urgent care room. So I made it. I apologize. Hopefully this goes plenty smoothly. Typically, the presentations that I do at Tableau use groups are often very crafted out, very scripted and prepared well in advance. And this is absolutely not that kind of presentation. As Luke said, I started at JLL about a month ago, and I am new in the role, and part of becoming new in that role is finding all the limitations of what my particular client lets me access, and so I wasn't able to send anything ahead of time. But you'll learn with me. Like I said, my name is Vince. For those who don't know me, I've been using Tableau since about 2015. I am a social ambassador and have been for 3 years. And I care so deeply about this community and about these events and about the direction that your life and your career can take by giving to events like this. And the more you put in, the more you're going to get out. And it warms my heart to see our numbers start to swell again, which is fantastic. So without further ado, I'll get started with sharing a few tips that I've come across recently. Like Luke said, I share a lot of stuff on Twitter. Started using the hashtag #TinyTableauTip, and it's just grown and grown. And to see so many people putting quick little tips out there has been fantastic, because it's tips that help people that have been using Tableau for years and years and years, and people that are also brand new to the tool. And sometimes the simplest tips are the ones that even those of us who have been in it for a long time are surprised by, which is super encouraging. One of those that I came across recently that has been an absolute game changer for my team is the use of Unicode in Tableau. Now, Tableau has been able to use Unicode symbols for a very, very long time,
But my way of normally doing that was to have a browser tab open with every different Unicode symbol that exists. And I would type in and search for like arrow or filled circle or whatever I needed. There is now, within the last couple months, a much easier way to do it, thanks to an update that Microsoft put out for Windows. Now, I don't know if this is possible on a Mac as well. I don't have one to test, but in anywhere you might type text into Windows, you now have the ability to hold Windows and push period. And it'll bring up this little search window. And you can type in circle, or you can type in check mark, or you can type in smiley face or warning symbol, whatever you might need. And then you can put that and use that anywhere within Tableau that you would otherwise enter text or character. Now that can be used as a symbol in your visualization. You can use that as a naming element in your data pane. You can add them in as symbols within the names of your worksheets themselves. Yeah. Yes, so if you hold Windows and you press the period key, Windows period. And it's a really handy way to quickly add identifiers to all sorts of different stuff. I'm just starting to wrap my head around the full breadth of ways that this can be used, in addition to just like general indicators and stuff like that. So something to chew on and see what you can come up with. For my next tip, I wanted to, I was helping out a teammate of mine who was building something kind of like this. They're building just a standard bar chart, and they wanted a little bit more separation between all of the individual years. Now, there was a couple ways to do this, and we tried just changing the width of the bars. We tried adding in additional things between each year, but that didn't really work too well. And then I found an example by a woman named Yvette Kovacs out of Budapest, who actually used the index function in Tableau. And there's a million different ways to use index, and I love each and every single one of them. But in this case, just adding that in as a continuous field, computed using whatever is kind of like separating your individual bars, in this case region, gives you a really nice spacing. And one of the things that makes certain visualizations resonate a lot better and feel a lot more intuitive is something called Gestalt principles. And there's a whole bunch of them, and it's fascinating to read up on. But one of those Gestalt principles is the idea that things that are clustered, grouped together visually, have something in common that is counting for that clustering. And using this technique and using index to build in a little bit of padding kind of goes right along with that, where you look at this and you intuitively understand there's a reason why these are clustered together. My next tip is one that has become a standard practice of mine. Anytime I am building a dashboard for a client, and it gets to the point where I'm demoing in a meeting and I'm seeking feedback from them. And the way that I usually did this in the past was how you might normally do it, where I just kind of had a sheet of paper or another like window on another monitor and kind of keeping notes there. And what I started doing was I started creating a floating text box. And when you create a floating text box, you can actually, in the layout pane, specify where the text box starts and its dimensions. And in doing so with a floating text box, you can actually have it exceed the boundaries of the dashboard itself. For this example, my dashboard is 1,000 pixels wide, and I specifically went in and I put it about 100 pixels past the edge of the dashboard. Now, doing so gives me a couple of really handy options. I found that when I'm recording performance, or excuse me, when I'm recording a meeting where feedback is being provided and I'm taking those notes, it's helpful for people to see everything that I'm writing. It builds a lot of trust that I am seeking to first understand what my end users are saying before I speak. And it just kind of, it makes it easier so that everybody can see what's going on. I can't say whether or not this shows up when you publish it to Tableau server. I don't know if Tableau server draws the bounds of that dashboard according to what you specify here or what is actually rendered. I didn't get time to test that out, but yeah, it's become kind of a standard part of my development, and it's been helpful. Sometimes we get dashboards handed to us that have built-in names for certain fields that we don't like. In this case, as an example, I just wanted to show customers, wanted to show how many times they had ordered and how much profit we were making from them. And I categorized these according to a couple of criteria into either heroes or villains. And the villains were the customers that had purchased more than 10 times, but were still costing us money. And I had to put myself in the role of somebody that frustrates me and name it something that is obscenely long and not useful at all. And this tip is one that I picked up from Autumn Batani, and you can change things inline within Tableau. You can double click anywhere. You can enter in text to try certain components of calculations. You can go in and you can double click things to see exactly what might be happening in the calculation that you're not seeing. And in this case, there's kind of a fun tip where if you add a comment like good versus evil, and then you hit Shift Enter, what that's going to do is that's going to take the comment that you wrote and the calculation itself, and it's going to basically insert a carriage return. And in doing so, you are able to essentially force a naming of that field that is not reflected over here in the data pane. It's not changing anything in the data pane, but just as the visualization is rendered, the formatting specifically for what you're trying to do becomes something that you yourself can control. I've run into issues around this kind of thing, specifically in building wide text tables, which I don't love doing, but sometimes you have to do what the client needs. And if you have restrictions around like certain columns have to have the same name, this has been a really good way for me to kind of work my way around that. Namely, there was a visualization I had to build where they wanted to show previous, current, and the delta across 4 or 5 different metrics. And they had typically just been adding a space and then adding 2 spaces and then adding 3 spaces so it looks the same, which I was like, yeah, technically it works, but yeah, this inline renaming would have made that a lot easier. So my next tip originated on Pinterest. This was something that my wife had seen this on Pinterest, and she asked me if I would be able to build something like this. And I said, of course I can build something like this. I love woodworking, and this is right up my alley. And so, but of course, because I'm me, my brain immediately goes to, well, can I recreate this in Tableau? Like, what would it take for me to build this out in Tableau? And I mentioned it to her, and her eyes glaze and roll over. And so I started putting together just a simple little list of all the people in my family and what their birthdays were. And when I put it in Tableau, I got it exactly how I wanted. And I noticed that there was blank spaces everywhere because I don't have people in my family with a birthday in every month of the year. And so one of the things that I did to get around that was I created a separate data source in Excel, where I basically just listed every single day of the entire year. And I saved this, and what I did was I changed the data source to include a right join to that list of full dates. And what this is going to do is this is going to give me a value for every single day of the year. But these center two columns, date and name, that are coming from my little list of birthdays that I had made, those are going to be null for all the days that doesn't exist. But now I have a data source where I can actually start to build out that kind of idea that I had, where even though there might not be any birthdays in June or October or December, I'm still able to use the fields from that full dates component of my data source, and then just visualize things where they actually exist in that data set that I had made. Now, short term, this was a really, this was a fun way for me to create something that came up in my mind. But the more I thought about it, the more use cases I came up with for having a component of my data that fills in all the missing spaces. Because I've had to build a lot of visualizations, whether they are calendars or whether they're line charts, where my end users wanted each component of that date field to be represented, regardless of whether there was data there or not. So another example that I just built out was kind of a quick little calendar using the same exact data set, but now I'm able to kind of build a calendar that looks and functions like an actual calendar, regardless of whether I had any birthdays on that date. So like I said, lots and lots of ways that you can use a more comprehensive date field in your data. So for my next tip, I wanted to highlight a part of Tableau Desktop that that I didn't know about or realize for a very, very long time. And that is right down here in the corner, these three little icons here. Now, we've talked about them in previous Tableau user group meetings, but essentially what they do is they give you the option to adjust how this line down here looks. Showing it as a film strip gives you a small little data preview, and clicking on grid view actually brings up a full grid of this kind of stuff. And it's been handy for me, and the most valuable way that I've used this is actually in opening up existing dashboards or existing workbooks that have a whole lot of different worksheets. This is one, for example, that I pulled up recently, had a whole bunch of different things. And rather than going sheet to sheet and waiting each and every time for the data to load, I was able to come to the grid view, right click, and hit refresh all thumbnails. And what this is going to do is this is going to send all of the queries and the computation requests all at once. And in doing so, now if I come back here and I scroll through these, they're all kind of like pre-visualized, preloaded. And it's just a way of really kind of speeding up my work process and getting familiar, especially with a new workbook that I haven't used before. Next up is a crosstab header. And so this comes in handy when you're building out something very simple where you might only have one particular field that you're showing. And when you bring that field out, I'll just show you, it doesn't have a header. And if you design your dashboard in a way that like the title of that component of the dashboard articulates it, then great, that's fantastic. But if you wanted to add in a column header there, similar to what I was doing before, you can add an inline calculation where you just type in what it is you need. And in this case, it pops it up as a column header. Simple little thing, but it can come in handy depending on how you need to build your visualization. So this next one, this is a weird tip. I wasn't sure the best way to show this because it's not about anything you might be visualizing, but in terms of process and when you're working, especially with something that has a whole bunch of different tabs, and you need to move a worksheet around, rather than like clicking and dragging and waiting for everything to move with it. If you click and you select and you're kind of like looking within a particular worksheet, and then you right click somewhere, I'll see if this works with my trackpad. This works so much better with the mouse. But if you right click, of course this isn't going to work now. If you right click, it'll just kind of drag that wherever you need it to be. I apologize for that not working, but that's what happens. I wish I had a mouse that worked. Happy to walk somebody through that later if they want. So my penultimate tip is about ordinal numbers. Ordinal numbers meaning kind of the suffix that you might see after a list of integers. And now this comes in handy specifically, most often for me anyway, when I am putting a value in a title. So if they're dynamically selecting something and I want to show in a easy to screenshot way, I wrote a calculation for it that I'll show you guys. So what this is this takes your number field and it basically determines, okay, well, if it ends in 11, 12, or 13, then that suffix is going to be th. Otherwise, check what the last digit is and add st, nd, or rd. So you get first, second, third, 11th, 12th, 15th, whatever it might be. And to test this, I just built the data set of 5,000 rows, went all the way down, and then I was able to kind of quickly validate that like any value you might need to use this for, it's going to work. To your point about breaking Tableau, I initially tried this on a data set that was 5 million rows, and that broke Tableau because when I brought in like my number field, it's not just querying the data, it's having to visualize each one of those 5 million numbers and then run computation against it. And yeah, that made Tableau wet the bed in fear. So I found the limit in that case. But there's a part of me that enjoys breaking Tableau and seeing exactly how far I can push it. All right, so I've got one more tip for you guys. And this one it's really interesting. I don't know how useful it is. I was in a community tips battle at the 2018 Tableau conference. And this was one that I saved from my final round because I was like, I don't know how useful it is. But when you add in a BizIn tooltip, I don't know if you've ever looked at it before, but it's essentially a string that brings in a few different values, the sheet name, the width and height, any filters you might be adding in. And so because it's a string, you can manipulate it. And so through a couple parameters and a couple calculations, I built a calculation that essentially recreates exactly what you see in that little tooltip window using the values of the parameters that I've built. And what happens is I can visualize things one way, or if I wanted to test it in the other configuration, I can make it really tall and really skinny. I can make it really short and really wide. I can adjust exactly what's being shown in the tooltip. It's just, there's so much you can do with it. And I threw a pie chart on there because why not? But yeah, like the way that BizIn tooltip window renders is something that you can change. It's something you can play around with. And especially if you're running into problems like this, where it says view is too large to show, or if you're wanting to do some like kind of user experience testing on server, This is a really great way to, in sort of a dev environment, really see what that would look like when it renders out. And I could see this being handy if you've got some users that are using 27-inch monitors and some users that are using 13-inch laptops, just as a way of kind of like building in to make sure that you're serving your end user with the lowest common denominator screen size. And especially if you're starting to build more complex viz and tooltips where you have multiple sheets being shown and essentially creating a small little snapshot dashboard within the tooltip, something like this is a really great way to make sure that it feels nice and balanced.
You would let the user decide how they.
In some cases,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
I would use this probably personally more on the development side
Okay.
myself, just because going in and individually changing the max height and
Yeah,
width
exactly.
on the fly gets tiresome, having to kind of switch back and forth between windows. And in this case, I've just set these up as a range from 100 to 500. But yeah, it's I started out that process wondering whether or not it could be done, and I was sort of surprised that it could be done. So again, I don't know how useful or practical it is, but I can see some use for it. So yeah, I thought I'd share it with you guys. And that's what I got. Happy to open it up to any questions anybody might have.
I was kind of curious on that comment thing that you had where you could actually comment before and then
Sure.
add a text to it. Now
Mhm.
you're getting into, so is that a good way then to name columns the same without Tableau getting angry at you? Because I think you're going into a little bit, but I think that's where you're going with that comment thing.
Yes. Yep.
Because you can name the comment, you can name them the same thing. So if you wanted like another column to be good versus evil, or if you want profit twice without having to put the space or something.
Mhm.
Is that what you were saying?
Yeah. So the time that I've run into problems in the past was when I had to show basically like kind of like measure names essentially across several different like dimensional categories. But yeah, it was I haven't played around with it too much to make sure that it's as dynamic as I want it to be. But yeah, it's
Yeah, it's like it does.
With that, can you do it on measuring as well, or just?
that is a good question. I don't think so.
Data sources for our clients.
Mm.
Curious if that would-
I don't think so if they are the native measure names and measure values that are generated by Tableau. I know several people in this room that have had plenty of suggestions with Tableau to make things like measure names dynamic and usable in calculations and stuff like that. Hopefully they
to double click on the sum profit right there in the tab and do a comment.
yes. Let's try it. In this case, another little tip: if you hold Control and you hit the up and down and left and right arrows, you can resize the cells that it's visualizing. Doesn't look like it's. Yeah, it looks like might just stay the same, but yeah.
So is there a spot where you use that as a lowest, using it else? That's kind of.
So aliasing is a little bit different because aliasing, there are times when you can alias and there are times when you can't alias. For example, if what you're wanting to alias is a measure like a string measure like these, it doesn't give you the option to alias, whereas the things that are brought in up here as dimensions can be re-aliased. So as far as when I would use inline versus actually creating a new element in the data. I would say it depends, because sometimes your requirements around manipulation of the data source are limited. But yeah, I can see times when you would want to do that. I'll come up with some other ideas. We can chat about it later.
I offer an
Yeah.
tip to the single column header.
Sure.
So rather than the inline, which is super cool, I can start using that. Take measure values and drag it on top of whatever the text box is, just like that. Let it go. There's your measure. That's courtesy of Jonathan.
Nice.
But that one killed me. I have to look it up all the time.
Take measure values,
Drag it over the column, the single column, so that you get the solid black box around everything.
So yeah, and yeah, anytime you drag another measure on top of an existing measure, Tableau is going to essentially bring out the measure names and measure values that it needs to kind of build the crosstab you're looking for. But yeah, doing that even with a single column, it's a great solution.
And if you try it a different way, like if you bring it to the left or the right, all your measures, try to put measure names on your columns, gives you all your measures, and you gotta filter that. And if you just drag it over the top for whatever reason. Puts a column header on there.
Also, Jonathan Drummy is outstanding, and
Well, yeah.
if anybody doesn't know who he is, look up everything he's ever done, because he's incredible. Drummey. Haven't been checking the chat at all, so if there's questions coming in here, I apologize.
I tried your toolbox or your text box out of bounds on the server, it does not render.
Oh, that's probably good news. So it's interesting. Yeah, so it's gonna draw that iframe that it's actually rendering the dashboard in according to what is specified here.
It does on the preview though. If you hit the preview here, rendered on your desktop.
Okay. Good to know. Seven, I think, yeah. Cool. Any other questions? All right. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. I am at quantum_relic on Twitter. And yeah, thanks everybody.
All right. Hello, we're back. I think you guys can hear me, so good. Let's move on to the next part, which is finding Luke's presentation. There we go. I actually don't even have anything.
Not screen sharing.
I think I'd have this down by now. All right. Well, all right, we're screen sharing again. Looks like it. Okay. Well, didn't really need a screen share because I don't have a slide dedicated to this, but we are to our last part of our agenda, which is always best thing I've learned, which was basically like Vince's presentation in a nutshell. But another thing that we love doing is group therapy. And so the whole idea of this is that if you are stuck on anything in your Tableau journey, anything that you're trying to get solved through at work or just for personal passion projects, this would be a good time to just raise it up. We can't guarantee we can like group solve it as there's a lot of people, but at least by throwing the question out to the universe, if you're in person, we can talk over drinks on it. And if you're virtual, we can reach out on LinkedIn or find you on Twitter to figure that out as well. So I will open the floor to anyone that has something that they would like group therapy on, or just a fun tip that hasn't already been presented by Vince.
Therapy topic.
Therapy topic, all right.
I'm trying to build a dynamic parameter for multiple fields, but so far I think I can only do it from single field. You don't have any alternative suggestions?
The question is for building dynamic parameters of multiple fields.
The specific use case is that I have, I'm looking at organizational hierarchy, so I've got, if I want to see all of, let's say, manager Matt's agents, or I want to see all of Matt's bosses' entire hierarchy, I just want to have a single field or filter where the individual could type their name and they could see their hierarchy and not have a separate filter for each level in the organization. And I can do it if I manually added all the different levels, but I can't keep it fresh dynamically.
I can give you an alternative solution than a parameter.
Sure.
Join to your same data set twice, one at a parent level, second at a child level. So you're getting the same data, you'll get the parent and the child. Does that make sense?
Possibly.
And
If you only want to go one level down, but yeah.
and your ability to do that is going to depend on your data source, because doing that with like an existing published extract probably isn't going to be a possibility, but certainly.
Yeah, it depends on your data source, absolutely. Yeah.
I will say there are ways around it. That is a very, very common, as old as time immemorial issue with Tableau. And people have found ways around it of like kind of like counting the number of values as a way of getting more. And people have found ways to create like an all option within parameters that kind of mimics a multi-select parameter. Yeah, that's probably the best, easiest solution I can think of too.
Yeah, otherwise, yeah, a number row function indexing might get you there, a lookup maybe get back there somehow with a lag. Yeah, it's one of those things you definitely got to play around with. Yeah.
Can you make a calculated field that, like if you have manager, subordinate in separate columns, can you make a calculated field that is subordinates like all strung together, something concatenated, and then your parameter can point to your concatenated field instead of the separate columns?
Problem is I've got like 10 levels, so I can't concatenate.
Yeah.
The problem with parameter is it's all 10 levels strung together, so you would have to find the one that you want in all of that.
Okay.
If you do an individual employee, it would be fine, but if you do like a mid-level manager, you're gonna get the rows from all the like underlying users.
It's very therapeutic and it's
And that's the point.
Yeah.
At the very least, you can understand that other people are wondering and struggling with the same thing, which is, I think, a big value of therapy.
So we should also make like an enhancement request on.
I can send you a link to a whole bunch of those exact requests.
We can
But yeah, depending on your use case, like if you're looking to build basically I'm thinking like a multi-tiered dendrogram org chart where you can select one person and kind of show their entire up and down line. I imagine somebody's worked through how to do that exact
I
thing.
built a network graph in Tableau. You can do it. It just you have to structure. You have to get your data structured correctly.
Do more with data. More is 2 O's. Do more with data.com. It's the name of the blog. It was just a blog post on how to do network diagrams, work charts, interactive with clicking, so you go up and down the hierarchy.
Yeah, and I'm sure you could use filtering parameters to change the different level of the borders you're hitting. So I'm sure you can.
data's also laid
Yeah.
out. Like there are
Yeah.
people who have built out ways like if your window obviously is have one select show the up next level down. The problem is like it's gonna you don't know your data structure, so if it's not set up in a way that
Yeah.
that would. I mean, I have freedom to build my own data structure here too. So
Yeah.
because it's
We can talk afterwards. I'm sure there's plenty of data nuts here to go through it with you.
all right.
I think that's really interesting. I'd like to stay engaged on it because I have got our background, which I was not working on currently, but there's some things about this that love me. I think we could have solved this with managers. So manager usually has 4 or 5 different types of roles, and they didn't really want to solve it that way. I still think so. What you're talking about probably would get me there too. So, those functions. Yeah.
She gives you 2 ways to do it.
Yeah. Do more with data.
Well, awesome. Well, we still have some people on the call. Is anyone else looking for group therapy that's virtual?
If you're crying, feel free to take yourself off mute. We'll empathize with you.
All right. Unless I have like.
Yeah, I put something in the chat. My name is Brandon. I'm new. This is my first meeting.
Hi, Brandon.
Hello. So I've been struggling with, I work for a bank, US bank, and we have a TDS file that connects our Tableau desktop to our DB2 environment. And in the midst of that, we're trying to now create incremental extract loads. And in doing so, the best documentation I've found is using prep. Yet prep doesn't appear to utilize a TDS file. So I'm just trying to figure out if anyone's ever tried to use prep to connect to DB2 with firewalls and network security, that we use connection strings in a TDS file to bypass, or not bypass, but pass through properly.
I work at US Bank. I've already solved this problem.
Ooh, we got a US bank. We got a US bank person here.
Bullseye, nice one.
I was gonna say, Ultrix didn't do a lot of this with our. I know what environment you're talking about.
Okay.
So if you want to message me, last name is Lee, L-E, first name Brian.
BRIANLE.
Yes.
Right.
Can you can someone repeat that? That's closer to the microphone.
Yeah. Well, Brandon and I actually just put it in the chat from Serena. Very confusing, but that is the Brian you need to track down.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah. Crisis averted. Love it. This is why we're here.
Yeah.
It's like a problem, but I'm just curious if anyone is doing it as a passion project, or if you know of anyone in the like community, wider community. I am really into genealogy, and I'm curious if other people are. Use Tableau. I have a very simple map. This tracking where my 5 generations of my daughter's family are from. But I was wondering if anyone else is interested in genealogy or like business that incorporate genealogy, so I could get some inspiration of where next to move my project.
Yeah. Awesome. So if you didn't hear the question virtually, there's a question about anyone working on a passion project related to genealogy. If you are working on something, you can either speak up or just add your name to the chat, and we'll get you connected with them. And if you're present, we can talk about it over beers.
Yeah. Is there anything, have you checked Tableau Public, if anybody's got anything cool out there?
Not a lot, but.
So I just dropped a quick link to Tableau Public. I just searched for genealogy, and there are things that people have done specifically with maps and some Sankey diagrams and stuff. So for a little bit of inspiration,
My base is the 8th one, the second one down.
oh,
Margaret's genealogy.
nice.
Well, there we go.
Awesome.
Well, fantastic. Well, thank you guys for all attending our latest monthly edition of the Tableau user group. We're looking forward to seeing you in August at TBD.
Popular place.
Because it is
September is General Mills.
September is General Mills. We're gonna find something. Maybe we can be live from State Fair. I'm just throwing ideas. So yeah, you'll see it on our usergroups.tableau.com. You'll see our next event listed. Thank you so much, everyone, for showing up.